Well, hello, my friends. In case you didn't know, this is John Morrow, and once again, it's time for Resolve to Live Forward. I hope you're having a good day, and thank you for spending these next several minutes with me today. I'm going to begin with something just a little bit different. I hope it lifts your spirits, but it certainly comes from a place in my heart where my spirits have been lifted. This is episode 21, by the way, in the series that began back in April, and it's a 6 month series. We'll go all the way through to the end of September. Hard to believe that we're coming down already now here on the 21st day of the month of August. He's always come out every Friday at 12 noon Eastern time. Hard to believe we've already come this far through the process. And stop and think about it. Beginning September the 1st, which happens to also be Labor Day Monday, we're going into the final 4 months of another year. Of course, we realize we don't know what's going to be happening in many, many ways. I digress. I apologize for that. The title of episode 21 is When the Message Changes the Messenger. Let's let that soak in for a second. When the message changes the messenger. This is not a lesson. This is not a list today. It's not even a challenge because I want to begin today with a personal confession. This podcast and the idea, the opportunity, and the privilege of doing it has changed me. I mean that sincerely. It's changed me. And it's changed me for a number of reasons. And those of you, and thank you, who've been following me, you can see how it's changed me, and you can see how it perhaps has changed you. When I began this particular series back in April, I knew what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about intentional living. I wanted to learn about resilience. I wanted to talk about the choices that we make. And I wanted to talk about getting back up after life has a tendency to knock us flat on our back, or maybe hit us from behind and knock us flat on our face. But most importantly, I wanted to keep returning to an idea that has become central to the way that I see the life that I live and the life that I want to share with you. And that is that, as you know, from the title of my TED Talk, my TEDx talk from February 21st of earlier this year, simply living forward is a choice. And Resolve to Live Forward plays to that. I believe that when I started, I believe that with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I still believe that to this very, very day. But 20 episodes later, there's a different understanding of it. I've changed because somewhere along the way, I've discovered something I wasn't expecting. This person behind the microphone that you are listening to, I'm changing. And maybe that's our conversation for today, sharing in our thoughts, our minds, and our lives in this process, how we are changing. Sometimes the message you are trying to give to somebody else becomes the message that you yourself most need to hear. And that made me realize that because the the letter L in my power word resolve is for lifelong learner. Well, this teacher is still very much a student because the whole point of living in a mindset of resolve is that you love to learn and you seek to learn and you strive to learn no matter what you do every single day. And you succeed and you fail. We sometimes imagine that people who speak, teach, coach, lead, write, preach, people who are mentors or who encourage others have somehow got everything figured out. Trust me when I tell you that's not the case. We have not. I don't stand behind the microphone every week because I have mastered my life. I stand here behind this microphone in this personal studio in my home because I'm still learning how to live. Still learning how to live the message of resolving to live forward. There is a tremendous difference here. I don't talk about living forward because every morning I jump up out of bed overflowing with enthusiasm and get down to business. It's true, some mornings I don't. I don't talk about resilience because, well, I don't talk about resilience simply because disappointment no longer bothers me. Disappointment bothers me. And can I be honest with you and tell you, I think I experience some forms of disappointment every single day across all aspects of my life. I don't talk about engagement because I never feel like I'm withdrawing from something, because sometimes I do withdraw. I want to be left alone. Not because I hate the world and hate people, but because I just need the time to be with myself. I don't talk about hope because I never have doubts. I have doubts. And certainly I don't talk about the intentional living process because I have a perfectly well organized life where everything that I know around the corner of my existence is in place. And certainly I can't anticipate what surprises are going to occur. And some of them are going to be pleasant, and some of them are not going to be pleasant. But anyone who knows me personally by now, well, yeah, you've smiled and maybe even chuckled just a little. Anyone who knows me personally will just laugh. I talk about these things because they are behaviors that become practices and they become habits and they are becoming hardwired. These are choices, behaviors, disciplines, the things that I must be renewing continuously again and again and again, resolving continuously again and again and again, because they are part of that definite, firm plan of action that I live. Living forward is not a destination to reach. Living forward is all about a direction that you repeatedly choose to go in. It's about forward progress. And there's no graduation ceremony, there's no diploma, there's not even a finish line, if you can believe me. And there's nobody at the end of whatever line there is out there in front of me where somebody is waiting to hand me a certificate. Congratulations, my friends. You have successfully completed life. And then you begin to realize, nope, I remain a student. Every single one of us remains a student. So, what are we talking about here? What has been going on in this process together over the course of these many weeks since we began this process back in April? Simple. We are in the process of repetition. Think about something like, think about it this way as something for me. 20 episodes now, here I am returning to many of the same fundamental ideas as I talk to you. I'm talking about choosing, about engaging, about serving, about learning, about growing, about forgiveness, about making adjustments, about dealing with the unexpected and having a plan of action. Now, let's get back up off of our backs for a second and realize that we don't surrender our future to the past. I had to write that down. We don't surrender our future to the past. We learn, and eventually we stop burning bridges, because burning bridges in almost all cases is never necessary. Now, there are people out there that burn bridges. I've met many of them, and it's hurtful. But we don't allow one painful chapter to write the end of the entire book, because the story is still being written. You've heard that before. And perhaps most importantly of all, you simply don't quit your life while there is still life available to be lived. I repeat, you don't quit your life simply because there's still more life to be lived. Now, I've said those things to you, but every time I prepare one of these conversations, I have to examine whether I am practicing what I'm preaching. And that's where things will really get interesting and have been interesting for me because there's a big difference between believing something and behaving as though you believe it. We can believe in exercise. We can believe that exercise is important even while we're sitting in a recliner. Are you getting that? Think about it. We can believe relationships matter while never picking up a telephone or sending a text. We can believe forgiveness is healthy while rehearsing an argument from 8 years ago in the shower. We can believe tomorrow holds possibilities while spending the entire day staring backwards. What you believe matters, but your behavior is what really reveals the true depth of your belief. Repetition is what begins to turn belief into a behavior. It's professional football and college football and high school football season in the United States of America and perhaps in other places. But I know here in the United States where I live, it's football time. And they're practicing. And here in Florida, they're practicing with heat indexes that are in excess of 100 degrees, which, by the way, that's a recipe for potential danger if they're not well hydrated and getting the rest they need and they have protections. But here's the thing about it. They're not out there just running plays. They're running the plays repeatedly again and again and again and again. Why are they doing that? It's called repetition because repetition is what athletes use in these sports and in any sport where they practice for the purposes of running the play so that they can perform it with precision and everybody can hit their block. Everybody can hit that spot that they're supposed to be in. Everybody can drop where they need to drop. Everyone can run the route that they're supposed to run. Every running back can hit the hole they're supposed to hit or find the running lane that they need to run through or find the blocker that they need to get behind. And the quarterback needs to be able to know the routes of all these. You know the game. Repetition is behavior, but it's persistent, consistent, intensive behavior. That's why when you repeatedly tell yourself that something matters so much, it will become who you are. That's why the voices around you matter. That's why the habits that you put forth every single day matter. That's why the stories that you tell yourself matter. And that's why I believe that intentional living matters. And intentional living is having a definite, firm plan of action and living out those 7 best practices for living, which are embodied in the 7 letters of the power word resolve, RESOLVE. But there's always going to be some questions. Here's one. What are our repeated choices helping us to become? What are our repeated choices each and every single day helping us to become? And I don't even know if helping is the right word. What are they causing us to become? I'd like to think that I'm not the same person that I was. I'd like to think that I'm very, very different. On the other hand, I'd like to also think that there are things about me that are consistent that people can depend upon and rally around. I'll tell you this much. I'm not exactly the same man who sat down to prepare episode 1 back in April when this series started here on this podcast, which is now in its 3rd year, by the way. And I'm glad about the fact that I'm not the same man that I was because growth should leave an evidence, a trail of evidence, or at least a trail of breadcrumbs. Now, it's not dramatic evidence. Probably no applause is accompanied it. Probably even many people have not even noticed in the world that I live in around me, and it could be the same for you as well. But have you noticed it? Have you? I have. I've noticed. I've realized something that once controlled my emotions doesn't have quite the same grip upon me anymore. And it can be the same for you, and you will notice you're thinking differently, you're responding differently, or you're recovering faster, you're choosing your battles more carefully. You let go of some things that really don't deserve a permanent residence inside your head. It's kind of like giving free rent to somebody who just really doesn't deserve to be a part of your thought process. You're beginning to understand that peace is sometimes more valuable than always having to prove that you're right. And you begin becoming more selective about where and what that energy deserves. Here's something that's interesting. You're also becoming more selective about who and what deserves your energy. Wow. Why do you devote your time on people, places, and things that have no interest in seeing you transform into the best version of yourself? Perhaps you're finally discovering that moving forward does not require forgetting where you have been. It simply means the past no longer is steering the direction that you're moving in. A lot of people dwell on the past. But when you can stop living in the past, which is history, and you can fully pour yourself into living your life today, you are experiencing growth. And I'm going to tell you something I've learned. Growth is not a quiet thing all the time. We do tend to celebrate big transformations, but most transformation does not happen with fireworks exploding all over the place. No, the transformation happens on an ordinary day like a Tuesday when you suddenly realize I don't react to that the way I used to. That's a victory. Or perhaps I handled that disappointment better than I would have 6 months ago. And that's a victory. Or finally, I made that phone call I've been putting off. That's a victory. I apologized. A victory. I paid restitution. That's a victory. I asked sincerely for help. That's a victory. I went back and tried again. I did not quit. That's a victory. I stopped trying to change somebody who doesn't want to be what? Changed? Yes, there are people out there who simply do not and will not want to be changed. And my friend, wow, that's a big victory. And that's a hard one to get through. I've had some 2026 in particular, and here we are coming up 8 months, almost done. Excuse me, I apologize for coughing in the mic. Here's what I wonder. If you've been listening to these episodes on a regular basis, and thank you very much, I appreciate that. Are you exactly the same person you were back when you began the listening process? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I hope you're not, because there was something that was going on in your life, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it was wrong about you. So you see, I hope that you're not the same person that you were when you began listening. And it's not because, again, there was something wrong with you any more than there was something wrong with me. But you are a different person because living things grow. And pause for a quick pop quiz. Are you alive? Are you growing? Are you still learning? Are you still experiencing? Are you still engaging? Remember the 7 letters of the power word resolve. I hope something's growing inside of you. Maybe you become a little more courageous. Maybe you have learned to forgive someone. Maybe you're forgiving on a more regular basis. Maybe you're asking for forgiveness. Maybe you've started to dream again. Maybe you've stopped describing yourself according to something that happened to you years ago and it really has no relevance in today's life. Maybe you're taking much better care of the relationships in your life that matter. Maybe you're becoming less willing to waste precious time on resentment. Maybe you've rediscovered curiosity. Maybe you've begun saying yes to opportunities you once would have simply rejected out of sleight of hand, with not even giving them so much as a thought. And maybe you've realized that your age, your circumstances, the disappointments of life, the mistakes that you've made, the failures that you've experienced, the losses that you've had to confront, or the detours that you've had to take did not automatically disqualify you from having a life with a meaningful future. I just really grow weary of this. Have you ever been around somebody that's a negative Nelly or just a sorry Charlie? They're constantly living a life of what's wrong today, what's wrong in this particular moment. They don't really know how to celebrate something, love something, enjoy something, experience something. They're in a negative spot. We just have to get to the point where we begin to realize that we can't dwell on the past and find ourselves moving in a positive direction. Life is about a series of changes. It comes in degrees. Now, here's an idea I love. One very small change in direction continued over enough distance eventually leads somewhere entirely different. It's true. 1 degree doesn't look like much of a change, but keep traveling. Eventually, that tiny adjustment matters tremendously. Life works like this. Maybe you don't need to reinvent yourself this week, but maybe what you need to do is make one small degree of change. One conversation, one habit, one boundary, one apology, one application, one walk around the block, one page of a book that you write, 1 hour spent learning something new, one decision to stop feeling bitterness, one decision to call somebody and tell them that you love them, one decision to get up tomorrow morning and try again. Try again. Never underestimate the power of 1 degree. We often postpone change because we believe meaningful change must have the appearance of being enormous, but it doesn't. A different future can begin with a very small decision repeated faithfully each and every single day after day after day. And that's what living forward looks like much of the time. It's not dramatic, it's deliberate, it's intentional. And we also, I have to tell you, my friends, we need to realize that over these several months that we have been together, another lesson has reinforced me. You do not need to become somebody else before you can begin. That's a trap. I don't need to become somebody else. Before I can begin, what does that mean exactly? I can begin when I become more confident. I got to wait till I'm confident. I can begin changing when I lose weight. I can begin changing when I make more money. I can begin changing when my situation around me changes. I can begin changing when somebody finally recognizes that I have value. I can begin changing when I'm not afraid anymore. I can begin changing when my confidence is at the right place. I can begin changing when everything in my life that seems like it's been in chaos finally settles down. And then I'll begin. No, no, no. Begin where you are, who you are, as you are right now. You can be uncertain and you can still move. You can be grieving and you can still move. You can be afraid. You can still move. You can have unanswered questions and they rack your mind and you can still move. You can have imperfect resources or no resources at all and you can still move. You can even have people doubting you. And believe me, there are people that doubt you. You can still move. You have to move. Living forward is not about inquiring and finding and then having those perfect conditions in place. Living forward is a decision. Living forward is intentional. It's on purpose. So I want to give you one more question. Maybe this is the question of the day. I'm not sure. But I'd love you to sit and think about this for just a second. And I'm not going to ask you to answer it immediately. I'm going to ask you to please think about it. Put some time and effort in thinking about it. Write it down. Don't dismiss it with an automatic response, but really consider it. Here's the question. Are you ready? Write it down. Ask yourself this question. Who am I becoming because of the choices I repeatedly make? Again, who am I becoming because of the choices that I repeatedly make? What do I intend to do? Not what do I believe? Not what would I like other people to think about me? No, who am I becoming? Why do you need to ask that question? Who am I becoming? Because tomorrow's version of you is being formed by the decisions that you're making today. Every time you do a habit, you're casting a vote on that matter. Your attitude is casting a vote. Your relationships are casting a vote. What you tolerate and put up with is casting a vote. What you practice and put into practice is casting a vote. What you refuse to release is casting a vote. What you are willing to learn is casting a vote. And what you do when nobody is watching may cast the biggest vote of all. Again, the question you need to ask yourself is, and don't answer it instantaneously, who am I becoming? We still have a road ahead of us. We don't know that we will breathe the next breath, see the next 5 minutes, the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next month, but we are now moving into the final stretch of this particular podcast series that began back in April. And I don't want to rush this because there are still some things that I want us to talk about. There are still some questions worth asking. There are still some choices that are worth examining. And when we arrive at that final prepared episode, I don't want this journey to feel like something that's simply come to an end. Duh. Rather, I'd like it to feel like something has been handed to us, to all of us. Call it a responsibility, call it a question, perhaps even call it a blueprint for living. But ultimately, I can't do the living forward for you. And you cannot live forward for me. But that's a beautiful thing, even if it's uncomfortable. The choice to live forward, to constantly ask the question, who am I becoming? The choice is ours. It belongs to us. And it begins the moment that we open our eyes to a new day, and it happens again and again and again. So here's the challenge for this week as we wrap up this episode. And we look forward to, by the grace of God, seeing each other again at this time next week. Here's the challenge. It's Friday. For those of you that follow this and join me when it comes out on Friday afternoons at 12 noon. But whether you're listening to it, picked it up and downloaded since while you're following through on Spotify or the Apple Store, or other podcast sites, take 10 minutes. Take 10 minutes. Now, here's some important caveats. Put the phone away. Turn the TV off. Set aside distractions. And this is 10 minutes for you, with you, period. Ask the following 3 questions. And again, if you've got something to write on, write it down, because I know I certainly wrote it down. Here they are. Question number 1. What has changed me so far this year? What has changed me in this year? Number 2, what do I still need to change? What still needs changing in my life? And number 3, what is one choice I can make now that moves me 1 degree in the right direction? 1 degree. Don't write a list of 20 goals. Choose 1. Think of it as 1 degree of change. But here's the kicker. Act on it now. Yes, act on it now. Reflection without action can become another form of procrastination, and we know all about the world famous Procrastinators Club. I've been a procrastinator in a lot of things in my life. You don't have to solve your whole life this week. You just need to choose the direction that you're going. You need to make that 1 degree of change. Here we are 20 episodes later, and I realize I've been participating in an experiment on myself as well as sharing it with you. You know what? I'm grateful for that. Microphones can become like a mirror to those of us who do podcasting and other types of, let's say, YouTube videos and whatnot. The message has challenged the messenger, and maybe that is exactly how it should be, because this can't be just about me. It's got to be about all of us. We teach what we are still learning in this life. We encourage others while sometimes encouraging ourselves. We walk beside people while still finding our own way. And somewhere in the shared journey, something remarkable does happen. We change. We don't change overnight, and we are certainly not getting perfect, but we are changing intentionally so that wherever we are today, we remember this fact. We don't have to have everything figured out. We don't have to undo what happened yesterday, because yesterday is history. And we don't have to see the entire road ahead, because life is a mystery. What we have to do is decide which direction we're going to walk now. And once we decide which direction we're going to walk, then take the next step now. Life is still a gift. That's why it's called the present. The road is still open. The story is still being written. Living forward is still a choice, and I'm John Morrow, the host of the podcast Resolve to Live Forward. And I want to thank you for joining me for this episode 21 of Resolve to Live Forward in this special series that began in April of this year, 2026. But it's time to wrap it up. I must leave, but until next time, remember the things that I've said, starting with 1 simple choice. So choose well. Live intentionally. But most importantly of all, as I always say when I wrap it up, live forward. Choose, resolve to live forward. I'm John Morrow. Talk to you again at this time next week. So long for now.